There's nothing better than customers sending pictures, by the way. Like, you guys may not realize this, but vintage sellers love to see pictures of you guys in your new clothes. We love to see how much you love it. One of my favorite pieces I ever sold, the woman that bought it took a picture barefoot with her hair up in a messy bun, no makeup on, with the box right at her feet of her, in her new jumpsuit that she loved so much. She just couldn't wait. It was the absolute best feeling in the world. My name is Melinda. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Fashion Conservatory, and I'm from Ohio.
My name is Jeff, and I'm co-founder of Fashion Conservatory along with Melinda, and I'm from Chicago.
Fashion Conservatory is a place where the vintage community can come together and support each other through commerce, community, and content. All right, so how we got here, why we opened Fashion Conservatory.
That's a long road.
It really is. So both of us have enjoyed vintage fashion since we were very young. Me for, Jeff, probably early teens?
For vintage fashion, yeah, teens, but for having an interest in old stuff in general, way before that.
When I moved to Chicago to move in with Jeff, who is my partner in life and business, I needed to clear out some closet space. And I'd sold online before, so I decided to go ahead and try selling online again. Cleared out my closet a little bit. I was between jobs, needed something to do. And he really helped me with that, photography-wise, and he also had some stuff. So then it became like, well, we have to go out and find stuff.
Yeah, it was something that we had both become very familiar with prior to living with each other, working on, marketplaces.
And Jeff is very, very good at finding cool stuff. So between the two of us, we had a collection that was a little bit out of control.
Yeah, sourcing was not a big deal at all. So really just getting involved with selling was just a little bit of a gear shift for us.
Yeah.
I had already done it, Mel had already done it, but we hadn't done it together with this sort of specific focus of vintage stuff.
So as I started selling, I decided I was going to make that my full-time job. And Jeff was still doing advertising work for an ad agency. So he was helping me in the areas I needed help. And through the course of starting my vintage business, when I was selling, I discovered that it was really difficult to find the information I needed to learn what I had, date the things I had, sell the things I had. I was really kind of scouring the internet for all of that. And I asked Jeff if he knew of a place, because he's been doing this as long as I have, if he knew of a place where I could find that information.
I really thought that it was just going to be like, oh, we're just not doing a good job on Google finding this stuff out. And every now and then you'd find like little bits and pieces, little nuggets. None of it was really veritable, and really none of it was actually trustworthy. And you'd go all over the place. Some of it was
really wrong.
And you'd go all over the place, and you spend all this time just be like, well, I just wasted half a day trying to figure this out. So that was sort of like the impetus behind our very first iteration of Fashion Conservatory. We had wanted to create a place where we could collect all the information that would be veritable and everybody would be able to view it. So sort of like a one-stop shop for your vintage fashion research.
As we continued to grow our selling business, the platforms we were using to grow that business really started failing the vintage product category. So we were having a harder time reaching customers. Customers were having a hard time finding us. Customers were having to sort through, as I'm sure you guys know, hundreds of listings that were completely irrelevant to what they were searching for, and getting very frustrated, whether it be reproduction when they're looking for authentic vintage, or fast fashion that someone's calling vintage for some reason, or just like your average contemporary fashion that's pre-owned that people have now decided to call vintage. It just became really difficult for our customers to find what they were looking for. And even if they go directly to our store on a marketplace and do a very specific search, things still weren't coming up in the search. They were just contacting me directly, like, hey, I know you have this thing, I can't find it, can you send me a link? And when
There's a lot of noise.
Yeah, there really was. And when it's hard for a customer to find you, a seller feels that as a loss of income, and a customer is feeling that as frustration. And so seeing both sides of that as a seller and as a customer myself, we really started to see the vintage fashion category online, even as the popularity of vintage was exploding, the actual people selling it, through this vintage category online were suffering. And we saw a lot of our peers have to actually close their businesses. They'd been around for longer than we had, and they weren't able to make a living selling vintage anymore. That was really hard. It's really hard to see someone that helped you get to where you are lose their business simply because a platform decided to change and focus more on contemporary fashion than the vintage one-of-a-kind category.
At the end of the day, it was like this product category was really neglected, and we just keep taking it right on the chin, and it keeps sort of like scattering everybody out. You know, as soon as like one platform wasn't doing well, everybody went to another platform, and when that platform wasn't going well, then they went to like social media, which isn't a selling platform really per se. So it's really just been kind of a mess, and we'd love nothing more than to help everybody like find a place for us, and that's what we're building, a place for the vintage folks.
My hopes for Fashion Conservatory. I would like Fashion Conservatory to be the place where anyone who loves vintage fashion can go to get the things they need. Whether that's commerce, buying new things, selling the things you have, a community connecting with other people who love vintage, or education, sharing your knowledge. Those things, need a home, and I really want Fashion Conservatory to be a home for anyone who loves cool old clothes, right? And that really includes people who want to learn about vintage fashion and just don't know. I want a safe place for them to come and ask questions and learn what they need to know to either buy or sell what they might have. And that also includes people that are, very high-level experts in this industry. I want them to have a place to share the knowledge they've acquired over the years so that it doesn't get lost with time.
Yeah, sort of like the ultimate or final destination, or just iconic destination for anybody working with old clothes from any industry or any level of enthusiasm or involvement or knowledge. You'll be able to find more knowledge here if that's what you're seeking. So that's what I really envision. It's just like, this is the place to go if you are interested in older fashion or vintage fashion.
Cool old stuff. My thoughts on fast fashion, where to start? So,
I think it's really just a big trend in one way or another.
I grew up as a teen in the 90s, and there was this big push through magazines, especially for women. You really didn't see men's fashion all that much in a lot of the magazines, to never wear the same thing twice, and people would be shamed if they wore the same thing twice. And I think fast fashion really capitalizes on that idea of wearing things only once and not being caught in the same outfit or the same shirt or the same dress 2 times. Oh my gosh, the horror. And in reality, we should be able to wear things multiple times.
I guess it has its place, but unfortunately, because there's so much money to be made off of it, I'm not sure it's going to be going away anytime soon, which is a bummer.
And speaking to this idea of, wearing things only once and moving on, the fast fashion industry only has to make clothing that will last for one wear. So the construction quality is bad, the textiles are bad, you get it wet, it starts coming apart. Let's face it, I think everyone has probably bought something that's fast fashion, myself included, and a couple of washes, and all of a sudden you've got holes everywhere. It's frustrating, but there are people that need to buy an expensive fashion because it's all they can afford. As founders, we don't pay ourselves, and there have definitely been times I've needed to grab something quick. So I think we're all a little bit guilty of it. I think there are larger conversations around the economy, how much people are making, how much they can spend on themselves at any given time. There's an entire conversation about, the boot theory. If you can afford an expensive pair of boots, you buy boots once. If you can't afford an expensive pair of boots, you buy many cheap pairs of boots over time. You end up spending more money over time. And I think fast fashion is really a part of that conversation that needs to be further discussed.
Yeah, it's definitely accelerated a lot of that consumerism. And for what it's worth, I know that there's a way for people to make fast fashion less damaging or less harmful. So I really don't want to just completely slam on the idea of cheap clothing. But at the end of the day, right now, it really is just so obviously a chase for profits and for whatever else economically.
And there are
that it's
so
really
many ways.
Making money at any cost.
Yeah, there are so many ways it harms versus, the people making it and how they're treated, the impact on the environment, the people that need to buy it versus the people that are buying it for something cute to wear. The state of the modern fashion industry.
So the state of the modern fashion industry, that's a really filled with conundrum. To try to answer that is really just a confusing facet of really sort of getting lost in so many of the problems that are A, being created by the fashion industry, and B, them seeking profits by the problems they're creating. So it's really difficult to pinpoint any specific one because it's really sort of a global issue. Even within just the concept of commerce and fashion, it almost has its own sort of irony set up.
I'm going to be honest, I don't really follow modern fashion all that much, but for me, I hear about the problems of destroying old stock, things that didn't sell, and that's just kind of soul crushing. So I think there are conversations to be had about the contemporary fashion industry and the things they can do to be more sustainable. And I think several of those labels and brands are starting to put that in practice, which is really fantastic. It's exciting to see. But speaking on a larger scale of the state of the modern contemporary fashion industry is definitely not something I'm qualified to do. Yeah.
I think it's very easy, and you don't necessarily have to shop for high-end stuff at all. I think it's very easy to create a wardrobe or a look, or to buy things that aren't at quote-unquote top of market value. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
It's out there. It's absolutely out there. It's exceptional value, and you definitely don't have to break the bank at all.
Yeah, you really don't. You don't need to be buying high-end vintage to avoid fast fashion. You don't need to be out there buying Balenciaga to replace your wardrobe. There are so many affordable labels and brands that are vintage, that are very high quality, and honestly quite inexpensive online. Part of discussing how to avoid fast fashion is discussing how to take care of the things you currently have, which is a conversation not a lot of people are having right now. Like, how do you take care of the clothes you have so they last longer? When buying high quality things, how do you make that go the distance? Yeah,
high quality vintage needn't be completely outrageously priced, needn't even be expensive per se.
Yeah.
Just regular, vernacular, everyday stuff is totally out there and totally available. It's in mass. Of course, if you're going to get real picky and you can only deal with, t-shirts that were made in 1910 to 1911, yeah, you're going to have a problem. But in terms of just regular everyday stuff, you can absolutely replace all of your regular fast fashion buying habits with decent quality vintage, and you'll have a very unique look. It's absolutely there.
There are a lot of labels out there that are very high quality and economically priced. And I would recommend taking a look, go to some vintage shops, go to some vintage fairs, and look at the clothing, look at how it's made, find labels you like, and then start hunting down those labels. Something that, a brand that fits your aesthetic, a brand that fits your style, a brand where you can determine that the cuts really fit you well and you're comfortable in them, and then start collecting those labels, because there are a lot of them out there that are beautifully made, have already lasted 50, 60 years, and are going to last another 50, 60 easily if you take care of them properly. So why is vintage important to me? Do you want to start this one?
Sure.
Okay.
Vintage is important to me because it allows me to express some inner thoughts and inner aesthetics that I have, and my love for older stuff. But even that is kind of superficial. But when we talk about old stuff and extending the life of old stuff, I think that that's very important and very impactful on so many different levels. I mean, we could talk about the environment, or we can talk about other economic issues. But at the end of the day, being able to extend the life of something, I think, is just so heartfelt and so amazing. And really, we can all contribute to it. And it's really easy. So vintage fashion is really just a great vehicle for me to express myself, both in terms of aesthetics, but also in the choices and the decisions I make about the fashion that I'm wearing and or consuming and or selling.
So vintage is important to me because I love old stuff.
We all?
I really love old stuff. There's a history there, there's a story there, And sometimes you don't know it, so you get to kind of make up your own story, right? There's something really magical about finding a garment that fits you perfectly without any tailoring, and knowing that the person that owned it before you was similar in some way. They had a similar style, they were a similar size. Like, what else about their life was similar to yours or different? I think that's really engaging for me. I also have loved this stuff since I was really little. So I got my first piece of vintage when I was 4. And it's a little felt circle skirt, the child circle skirt from the 50s. It's hand painted. I just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my whole life. And someday some other little girl needs to get that skirt. So for me, it's like, I love this stuff, but I want to save it so someone else can love it too.
Yeah, I think the general fascination with what did this garment go through to get into my hands? Like, what kind of life did it have before I had it? I love to get lost in those sort of like narratives as well. Like, sometimes we'll see a crazy 20s party dress or something like that, and you can just imagine, what kind of crazy stuff did this thing see before it got here? So those kinds of stories, especially, even like workwear stuff, like, how many hours did this guy hammer on a thing to get this rivet
workwear
in or whatever? And, when it gets all worn, or it's got like a special thing that's like really kind of distressed or worn, it's just like, how long did it take for that to happen?
Yeah.
And how many times did this guy have to do that to make that happen? So those kinds of narratives and those kinds of stories, they're really, for me, they're very romantic and very real.
Oh, okay. So a lot of people would see me in the way I dress and the things I sell online, and they'd think that the highest of the highest end is what I'm passionate about in vintage. And yes, I love that stuff. It's very cool. It's really extraordinary to get to handle it and explore it. But the things I wear most in my vintage wardrobe are things like my 1950s beat to heck, totally destroyed gabardine workwear jacket. I live in that thing in the winter. Whoever loved it before me broke it in perfectly. It's a men's jacket, and it just, the way it fits, the way it hangs, I wear it everywhere all the time. I hate winter, but I get excited for cooler weather just so I can bust out that jacket.
Yeah.
And, it's little things like that that they're not perfect anymore. They've been used to heck and back. And I'm going to take care of it well enough that someone else will get it after me. So whoever you are getting my awesome workwear coat after me, please take good care of it.
And I think my passion, a good part of my passion really relies on finding or hunting or digging up.
You're so good at it.
Interesting, weird old places, finding things where they shouldn't be, talking to people, and then making friends and becoming colleagues or friends or whatever you want to call it, and making relationships with people that, they have this stuff they don't need, and we're able to like liberate it per se. Because really, one of the other sides of vintage is knowing that the things that we're able to get and we're able to put into other people's hands. So sometimes, you can really rehoming stuff. So, sometimes you can really, you can find a piece and you're just like, oh my God, it's just so incredible, so awesome. And even if it fit me, I would be like, you know what, somebody else really needs to enjoy this.
Yeah.
So finding that person that's going to be able to enjoy this really cool piece or this really cool stuff is really, that's just about as gratifying as finding the piece itself.
It really
Knowing that
is.
it's going to go to a good home or somebody's really into it. It's just like, I've been looking for this forever. It's just like, here it is. And it's stuff like, it's events and occurrences like that that really help fuel my passion. I mean, finding stuff is one thing, but then giving it more life or letting somebody else have it that would really enjoy it, that's another really piece of joyous passion that I really, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking to do. Help people find the good stuff and get it.
I think that's really my favorite part of selling. There are plenty of things we get in that either wouldn't fit me, aren't my style, I don't have any place to wear them. And that excitement of getting to rehome something for someone who loves it, there's nothing better than customers sending pictures, by the way. Like, you guys may not realize this, but vintage sellers love to see pictures of you guys in your new clothes. We love to see how much you love it. One of my favorite pieces I ever sold, the woman that bought it took a picture barefoot with her hair up in a messy bun, no makeup on, with the box right at her feet of her, in her new jumpsuit that she loved so much. She just couldn't wait. It was the absolute best feeling in the world. Okay. Curating your own vintage collection. Buy everything. No, okay. Yeah, so if you're curating your own vintage collection, you're just getting started. Okay, so you're just getting started curating your own vintage collection. Try new things. Always be trying new things. When you're buying vintage, you're open to every style that's ever existed, every color, every textile. And I think it's really a fun time to start exploring what you may or may not like. And if you buy something you don't like, don't worry about it. You can pass it on to another owner. It's not like it's on trend at the moment and going to be out of style when you sell it. It's timeless at this point, right? So
yeah, I think it's really about finding something, an image or a timeline or something that is sympathetic to your everything, something that you really align with. And that's probably going to be the first step, is like, what sort of time frame or timeline are you really most aligned with?
Yeah, and I feel like that comes through experimentation, really.
Yeah, looking for stuff, again, looking through magazines or old movies or, old media of one kind or another. You can see like, oh, I really like the way that person looks, or I love that hair, I love these colors, or whatever it could possibly be. And then you can grow from there. And then you can learn more about that specific period. And then you can see what it's like to acquire some of the clothes there. And maybe some of those periods are repeated later, like again, 30s and into the 70s and stuff like that. So there's a lot of repetition, but it's available, and it just takes some looking around. Like, what can you find that you really sympathize with?
All right, so advice about starting your own business. If you're taking the full leap into your business without having another job on the side, make sure you have enough money saved up to sustain you through at least 6 months to, I'd say, even 18 months. It can be really difficult to get started, and make sure you have that buffer. A lot of people end up failing because they run out of money, and that's just a normal part of starting a new business, is failure. So be comfortable with failure. Make sure you have enough money, and that's not going to be one of your problems. And make sure to keep moving forward even when obstacles come in the way. So don't let your first failure or your 50th failure stop you from moving forward. Make sure you're constantly moving forward.
One piece of advice that I could really give towards starting a business would be to not do it alone. You are not alone. There are other people out there, and seek help. Trying to do too much of it yourself, it's probably going to be impossible. It's going to be an insurmountable task. And there's lots of folks and organizations and teams of people that want to help. So don't do everything yourself, and don't do it alone. There's help.
Yeah, and it can feel very lonely when you're starting a business, like you don't have anyone to turn to or anyone to talk to. But if you take that little bit of vulnerability and put it out there and let people know you do need help, we've always had somebody step up. It's been a really fantastic way to find out, who your friends are in your moment of need. And sometimes you haven't even met your friends yet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Something else I'd say, make sure that you've done your due diligence ahead of time. If you're making a small local business or whether you're making like an online business, make sure there's a want and a need for what you're making. Make sure you're solving a problem. Make sure you're talking to customers or people that would be your customers, and finding out from them what their wants and needs are, because maybe the idea you're thinking of doesn't quite align with what your customers actually need. We've seen several businesses fail that way, and it's very important to talk to your customers and find out what they're looking for so you can help them find it, so you can fill that gap.
Yeah, having an idea is one thing, but being able to make it truly practical for people to really want and, or even better yet, need, that's something else.
All right, so what would I like to say to the vintage community? We love you guys. You're out there saving this stuff every day, whether you're a seller finding it and restoring it and getting it into a new home, or you're the person buying it and giving it a home and taking care of it for the next person that comes along. We're all in this together, and we love you guys. Let's go save some more vintage.
Yeah, anything to like bring us together as vintage fashion enthusiasts or sellers or lovers or whatever it could possibly be. Anything that's going to bring us together. Like, that's what we're trying to do. We're really trying to bring it together.
We want to meet you guys. We want to talk to you guys. We want to find out what you need from a site like ours, what you've been looking for, so that we can build it. Like, we're here to help everyone in the community come together.
We're here to be the place that is the place for us, quote unquote.
Yeah, the place people. For us.
We're here.
If you love vintage fashion, or if you're just interested in finding out more, Fashion Conservatory is the place for you. If you are a high-level vintage fashion collector, Fashion Conservatory is the place for you. If you have any interest, love, passion, expertise in vintage fashion, come by Fashion Conservatory. We want to make a place for all of us, a place we can come together and really change the industry for the better.